offering a discount to anyone who has lunch there today. So they donate half of today's lunch proceeds to San Juan Citizens Alliance. We're trying to do that just to engage a little bit with the local restaurant community, because as you might imagine, they are needing some of our help. And it's all takeout and it's super yummy too, I might mention. Let's see, I want to get on with the presentation for today. Our topic, which I believe you know, is CPACE, which is the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. And that's a financing program that enables eligible commercial and industrial buildings to finance up to 100% of energy efficiency and conservation efforts. And today's speaker is Tracy Phillips, and he's the director of the Colorado CPACE program. He's a certified energy manager, certified demand side manager, certified measurement and verification professional, and he has a master's degree in physics. His 24 years of experience includes energy audits, recommissioning, measuring and verification, master planning, sustainable design assistance, and third-party technical reviews. So everyone give a wave of welcome to Tracy Phillips. We're delighted he's here, and he's going to take over the screen here and tell you a little bit about the CPACE program.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Let me get my slides up here.
We see them.
All right, great. So yeah, thanks everyone for inviting me here today to talk to you about the Colorado Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. I want to mention right away, because I know I'll forget, I'm actually going to be in Durango next week. I'm getting in Monday around dinner time probably, and I'll be around Tuesday. So I'm actually visiting one of the buildings, new construction project that the program financed in Durango. It was the first one in La Plata County. So I'll be visiting them on Tuesday just to do my walkthrough and make sure everything was done the way it was supposed to. But I will be available. I don't get down there too often. So if anybody wants to get together, just let me know, reach out, and we could try to set something up. Okay, so let me tell you about CPACE. So
hey,
the program.
Tracy, one quick question. Do you want to share your video or not share video?
I prefer not to, if that's okay. I hate seeing myself talk.
Okay. Okay, good deal. We'll just see your name then.
Yeah, when I'm done talking, I'll put the video back up.
Excellent.
All right. So the CPACE program was launched here in Colorado in 2016, and the program was designed to help finance energy efficiency, renewable energy, and water conservation projects, as well as efficient new construction design. We were actually the first program in the country to offer CPACE financing for new construction as well. And it's really exploded, and I'll tell you more about that. The program, so it was enabled by some legislation that was passed in 2015, and that created a statewide district. We call it the New Energy Improvement District. And that district enabled the program, and the Colorado Energy Office as the state sponsor to develop the program and launch it. The program is a statewide program, but each county needs to opt in before we can start financing projects within that county. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. The other thing I'll mention is the program itself and all of the projects are financed through private capital. So there's no federal money, there's no grants, there's no state money, no tax money. It's all private capital that finances both the program and the projects. And the program itself is overseen by a board of volunteers that are appointed by the governor. And there's 7 of them on the board. They're led by Jeffrey King with the Colorado Energy Office. And then there are other folks on the board from various stakeholder groups like banking, commercial real estate, energy consulting, the utilities. So they sort of oversee the program at a high level. So what is CPACE? So CPACE financing was developed to offer building owners and developers a different way of financing their projects. And it was designed to try to get at some of the barriers to financing these types of projects. Two of the bigger barriers we would historically hear an owner say is, I don't have the money to do this project, or I don't know how long I'm going to be in this building. So I don't want to invest in anything with a longer payback period. So that's where CPACE comes in, right? So there are basically three components to CPACE that make it different than other sources of financing. So the first is it's 100% financing. There's no out-of-pocket. CPACE will cover all of the hard costs and all of the soft costs and anything related to your energy efficiency or renewable energy or water conservation project. The second piece is it's long-term financing. So you can finance a project up to 25 years, as opposed to, say, a traditional loan, which might be 20% out of pocket over 5 years. So it's very different in that aspect. And the third piece that really makes CPACE different is it's an assessment. We call it a special purpose assessment that's placed on the property. The reason it's done that way is by being an assessment on the property, the owner makes their payments through their property tax bill. It becomes a line item on the property tax bill. So when you pay your property taxes once a year or twice a year, you make your CPACE payment along with your property tax payment. Being on the property tax bill means if an owner sells their building, the financing will reside with the building, basically sticks with the building. So you can sell your building and hand off future payments, that future payment obligation, to the next owner. So you're paying for the upgrades that you did for the 5 years that you own the building, you sell it. Now the next owner is going to enjoy those energy savings and they're going to pick up the payments from that point on. Some other repercussions of it having it that way are it's a non-recourse financing. There are no personal guarantees. The building itself is the main piece that's underwriting the financing. So there's a lot of advantages to CPACE over other types of financing. So what's eligible? Well, the C in CPACE stands for commercial. So any commercial, industrial, or agricultural building is eligible for financing. It's not available to residential, but commercial, industrial, and agricultural. That does include, however, multifamily. So if you have 5 or more units, that's considered commercial multifamily. So an apartment complex, let's say, would be eligible for financing. Another big a common question I get is nonprofits. They don't pay property taxes. So how does this work for them? Well, nonprofits have assessments placed on them just like everybody else. So that doesn't matter. So we can absolutely work with nonprofits. In fact, CPACE is a great fit for nonprofits. They tend to not have a lot of money for these types of capital improvement projects. So CPACE could be a really good fit for them. And I have a couple of case studies I'm going to show you of some nonprofits. And then anything with a utility cost savings is eligible for financing. So any energy efficiency, renewable energy, water conservation improvement that you can think of, if you can quantify a utility cost savings, a reduction in your utility bill as a result of that improvement, then it's eligible for financing. And I'm going to show you again some case studies that give you an idea of what types of projects are being financed in Colorado. Not only are the improvements eligible, but anything related to the improvements or to the project is also eligible for financing. So if you have to do an energy audit or any kind of engineering or architectural or design work, or let's say you're doing a boiler replacement project and you have to do asbestos abatement, the abatement effort would be considered related and eligible for financing. Or if you have to do structural improvements to support a new solar PV system on the roof, those structural improvements would be eligible. So you can really bundle quite a number of different improvements and related items and get your building improved and fixed up all through CPACE. I mentioned in Colorado, we were the first program to offer new construction financing. So So this was new and to the market, and it's really taken off since it was introduced. Actually, over half of the dollars financed now in Colorado are for new construction project financing. And the way it works is if you build to the 2015 Energy Code, regardless of what your jurisdiction might require. So if you're saying I'm volunteering to build to the 2015 Energy Code, then the project qualifies for 15% of the total construction costs, can be through CPACE. And if your design is going to be 5% better than the 2015 Energy Code in terms of the building's energy performance, then that project qualifies for up to 20% of the total construction costs. So the idea behind the new construction financing is I used to do a lot of sustainable design assistance, and a lot of our ideas would get value engineered out because, of budget constraints. So the idea with CPACE is that doesn't have to happen. You can include all these really innovative and neat and sustainable design features because you have access to this cheaper source of capital. And to give you a sense of why CPACE is so powerful in new construction, on the left, you have a capital stack. So when you're putting together the financing for a new construction project, typically you'll have a construction loan, and that'll be the majority of the financing, say 60 to 75% of the financing. And that's usually low interest rate money. That'll be 3 to 6% interest rate money. But then you have your owner's equity or say a mezzanine loan. These are other sources of financing, and they're high risk money. They're higher interest rate money, say 9 to 20% interest rate. So the idea is if CPACE can be used to replace, let's say, the mezzanine loan or the owner's equity or some portion of that piece of the capital stack, CPACE is usually around 5 to 6% interest rate. So you're replacing 9 to 20% interest rate money with 5 to 6% interest rate money. This is incredibly powerful to a developer. This is why it's so attractive in the new construction front. So just to give you some perspective, CPACE wasn't created in Colorado. It actually started over 10 years ago. And there are 24 states with active programs. You can see across the country, there's been almost $2 billion financed through CPACE, over 2,500 different projects. So there's quite a precedent. It may be new to a lot of the communities in Colorado, word's still getting out, but it has been around. There is quite a few building owners and developers that have used it. Here in Colorado, I mentioned it's a statewide program, but each county has to opt in. So we're actually up to 32 counties that have opted into the program. This represents about 75% of the building stock in Colorado. So we have some pretty good coverage at this point. You can see there are some still larger counties like El Paso and Douglas and Mesa that haven't opted in yet. We're still working with them, and plenty of rural communities that we're having discussions with that we're hoping will opt in. One thing I'll mention about county participating, really all they need to do when a project closes, they place the assessment on the property on behalf of the program, and they place assessments all the time, right? So that's nothing really new to them. And then they're the collection agent, right? So when an owner makes their payment with their property tax bill, then the county sends that payment to the program. So there's a little bit of administrative effort there. So that is a little bit, it's not a lot, but it is something extra that the program is asking a county to do on their behalf. And to recognize that, the county receives a 1% fee. 1% of the annual payment amount goes to the county to reimburse them for their administrative effort. So in other words, if a project's payments are $80,000 a year, the county would get $800 to cover their time spent on that project, which is typically about 30 minutes a year, not a lot of time. So this was based off of a paper done by Rocky Mountain Institute, a white paper released in earlier this year. And it sort of gives you a sense of the potential we're talking about when we're improving buildings, their energy efficiency. So their study showed that buildings typically with no or low cost improvements, they could save about 15% on their utility bill. For capital improvements, so replacement projects and larger projects, you're looking on average at reducing your bill by about 35%. This translates, though, this is what really resonates with building owners, typically into an increase in their net operating income of 2.4 to 5.6%. So that's good for everybody involved, the owner, a mortgage holder, whomever, and the value of the property is going to go up fairly significantly, between $5 and $11 a square foot on average as a result of these projects. So as an example, a 75,000 square foot building, by doing an improvement project like this, you could be looking at increasing the building's value from $343,000 to $800,000. So that's a significant part of the storytelling when you're considering doing a project like these. One of the pieces of the process involves what we call mortgage holder consent. So as an assessment on the property, an assessment takes priority ahead of the mortgage. Any assessment does, and CPACE is no different. So it takes priority ahead of the mortgage. What does that mean? Well, it means essentially that the mortgage holder is subordinating to the CPACE assessment. That's a word I found banks don't really like. They don't like to subordinate, but it's okay because as part of the process, we have a conversation with the bank, and there are advantages to the bank for this type of financing, this type of project. So if you look at the bottom half of my slide, these projects, like I said, they result in a better net operating income for the owner. Banks like that a lot. They like NOIs going up, so that's a positive. And I mentioned on the last slide, the value of the property is going to go up, in some cases significantly as a result of this project. Again, that's the bank's collateral, right? They like that a lot as well. The other part of it is the risk. The banks are risk analysts. So they always say, well, what happens in a default? So not to go into the weeds too much, but the main point is CPACE does not accelerate in a default scenario, meaning it perpetuates, it continues on with the building. So the only thing that needs to be cured, so to speak, in a default scenario are any delinquent payments, 1, 2, maybe 3 years worth of payments. That's what the bank is subordinating to, which is usually less than 1 to 3% of the building's value. That's what those payments equal. So the risk is very small. The fact that a default will even happen is pretty rare, but if it does, the risk is small. So here in Colorado, we've had over 32 banks provide consent to date, many of them multiple times. And it's nice. Once a bank has provided consent once, now they know about CPACE, they tend to understand it. It becomes a much easier conversation down the road. So there's a lot of precedent. And many of these banks, this is how they got introduced to CPACE, and they became capital providers as a result. So they're financing projects in Colorado once they learned about it. On the new construction side, we've had over 20 senior lenders, construction lenders provide consent. So again, it's becoming a more known entity, a more known component of these types of projects, and banks are becoming more and more comfortable with it. In terms of the financing, I mentioned it's all private capital that finances these projects. We have what we call an open source funding model in Colorado. It means anybody can finance these CPACE projects in Colorado. They just have to get registered with the program. And when they're underwriting these projects, there are two main things that they tend to look at, and you should know about. The one is the loan to value. If the loan to value is 80% or less for a building, that it tends to be a good candidate for CPACE financing. That's not a rule, but that's what they're usually looking for. So what does that mean? So say I had $1 million building and a $700,000 mortgage on that building. So that's a 70% loan to value. So that'd be a good candidate for CPACE. In terms of how much financing an owner could expect to get, it's usually about 20% of the building's value. And again, that's not a rule. I've seen it as high as 30, 35%. So going back to that $1 million building, that means that would translate to about $200,000 in financing that somebody would be willing to lend to that owner. And we currently have 38 different capital providers financing projects across Colorado. And you can see they're a real mix of community banks, credit unions, other CPACE specialty financing organizations. And the nice thing about having the model we have in Colorado with all these different capital providers It means that we have a lot of, they're interested in a lot of different types of projects, whether it's different regions of the state or size of projects or types of buildings. So it allows the program to really finance a pretty broad spectrum of project types. Excuse me. And here's what the program has done to date in Colorado. We've financed 79 projects, little over $90 million in financing so far. You can see some of the metrics there in terms of jobs created and emission reductions. The smallest project that we financed in Colorado has been $60,000. The largest currently is $7.1 million. And on that note, I'll mention the biggest CPACE project in the country was a $53 million project in Utah. My point there is the sky's the limit. You cannot have a project that is too big for CPACE. There is absolutely tons of money that wants to invest in these types of projects. Some of the other metrics here, average project size, a little over $1 million, with the median being more around $600,000. We've done 20 new construction projects here in Colorado, and I mentioned the counties. We have 246 registered contractors, so those are all different disciplines: solar, lighting, mechanical, roofers, energy consultants, and all of that. So I'll take up my last few minutes with some case studies, just to give you some idea of types of projects that the program is financed. So here's an example of sort of a smaller building, if you will. This is just under a 4,000 square foot dry cleaners. They did a $125,000 46 kilowatt solar PV system. They did some of it on the roof, but they didn't have a lot of roof space, but they did have a lot of land that they weren't really utilizing. So they put a ground mount system to complement it. And of course, these projects, CPACE is just a way of financing it, right? So all of the tax credits, like the investment tax credit, maker's depreciation, any incentives from the utility or the county or whatever you might have bill, that all goes to the owner just like it normally would. CPACE doesn't affect any of that. Here's another example of a smaller rural project. That's Steve Ella. He's an organic farmer in Paonia up in Delta County. And he did a $60,000 26 kilowatt solar PV system on the roof of one of his barns. So that was a nice little project. In terms of bigger projects, this is the biggest one we've done in Colorado. This was a $7.1 million comprehensive project. This was 2 large commercial office buildings. They're mirror images of each other. And they did a whole bunch of improvements. They replaced all the rooftop units. They put on evaporative condensers on the units. They had all new controls and advanced metering, lighting. They did replace the plumbing fixtures and did smart irrigation systems. They even included, they got LEED certification, LEED for existing buildings for these 2 buildings. That was about a $90,000 certification effort. They included the cost of the LEED certification in with CPACE. So that was also considered related. Here's another project, and this is typical of what we see with a lot of building owners. This owner desperately needed a new rooftop unit and a new roof. And so that's what brought them to CPACE. But you know, what a lot of owners will do is they'll say, well, what else is on my bucket list? What else can I get done since I'm doing this project anyway? So in this case, the owner, that you're putting on a new roof, that's the perfect time to do solar. So they included a 16 kilowatt solar PV system. They also did something really neat, which is they included electric vehicle charging stations. The owner had always wanted to do that, so they installed these 3 charging stations. So this is a case where they took a real negative, right? They had to get the roof top unit and the roof replaced and turned it into a positive, getting all these other items on their wish list taken care of. On the new construction front, here's one of the first ones we did. This was the Mayfly headquarters building in Montrose. They needed a new manufacturing facility and headquarters, and so they used $1 million in CPACE to help them get that built. And it included all types of, efficient rooftop units and controls and heat recovery. So it was a really, really neat project. We've also, like I said, we've seen a real explosion in hospitality, hotels. 9 of the 20 new construction projects have been hotels. That's what I'm coming to visit actually in Durango on Tuesday. This is one that's up in Silverthorne, and it's a good example. This was a $2.8 million CPACE finance project. And again, allow them to really do a lot of neat, innovative design features, energy efficient, sustainable features. Another big segment we're seeing is gut rehab. So this was a big box retail that had been vacant for quite a while, and the developer turned it into this amazing gym and recreation facility. So they used 1.7 million in financing to help improve the envelope, new windows, new skylights, all new HVAC, destratification fans. So we've seen quite a few of these types of gut rehab. The last two I'll show you are nonprofits. This is a museum in Denver, the Forney Museum. And again, this wasn't a very big project by CPACE standards, about a $62,000 project, but the museum didn't have any money to get this project done, even a project of that size. So this was a great fit for the Forney Museum. Another one, this is a $1.9 million retrofit project at a senior center. And we're seeing a lot of senior centers as well utilizing CPACE. Again, they tend to be strapped for cash. So CPACE can be a really good fit for these types of projects. So if you have a project in mind, if you're interested, the very first step is to submit this pre-qualification submission form. You can download this on the program website, copace.com, and that'll get the process started. You'll send that into us, and then I'll reach back out to you, and we'll do a kickoff call and get going. So there's my contact, Tracy Phillips, my associate, Ken Gallagher. He and I are sort of your main points of contact with all things Colorado CPACE. So Ken and everyone else, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate this time.
Well, stay with us, and thanks from everybody to you. That was very informative. I'm especially impressed with how many lenders you have involved. That's a wide footprint. That's great. I know we've got a couple questions, and then we're going to break into the two groups, and Tracy will still be with us to go with any follow-up questions. So thanks so much to Tracy. Let's see. First up, Tim Wheeler, you had a question. Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thanks. I'm sorry, I joined a couple minutes late here, so I don't know if you covered this, but and this may be outside the wheelhouse, but our local school district, Region 9, or 9R, I should say, we just gave approval for a large bond to do a lot of work on the buildings, which would include rooftop replacement, HVAC, a lot of things like that. I think there's even building a new school. And I'm just wondering how, or if, CPACE could supplement the ability of these improvements in the school to do things like strengthen the roofs and add solar or vehicle charging, electric vehicle charging, energy efficiency, and so forth. Is that a possibility here or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So so public buildings in general, whether they're school districts or government buildings, county or municipal buildings, they are technically eligible to utilize CPACE. However, and this is a big however, unfortunately, TABOR is an issue for them. So TABOR is the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, and it essentially says that an organization like that cannot go into a long-term financing agreement without voter approval. So TABOR really limits our ability to serve public buildings. The exceptions are if a public building has what they call either enterprise status or voted authority, then TABOR should not be an issue, and that we could work with. That'll usually be, though, it's not usually a school that'll have that kind of status. So unfortunately, a private school for sure we could help, but public school districts, because of TABOR, we can't really. It's not CPACE. We'd love to do help out, but TABOR limits what we can do there.
So the passing of a long-term bond issuance is not the same thing as approval for long-term debt?
That's right. It's different. And the only way we could make it work is it would have to be on the ballot, and the voters would have to approve using CPACE going into a financing agreement. And at that point, if you're doing that, you might as well get another bond, because a bond's going to be a much lower interest rate than what CPACE is going to be able to deliver.
All right, thank you.
Good questions, Tim. And couple folks asked, is it okay, Tracy, if we share a recording of this through our network?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and on our website, on the copace.com website, in the resources section, I also have sort of a 2-hour version of the presentation you just saw. So if you really want to, you know, help get yourself to sleep one night and look through my slides, you can download it there and check it out.
Au contraire, I found it pretty fascinating, and I'm not even a developer. It's just, you explained that very well. Let's see, I'm going to hold off on other questions because we're going to split into our 2 rooms. If you want to have more question and answer with Tracy Phillips, Dick White, my apologies, but you can ask, and if you just stay right here. If you want to move to a lighter networking room, hosted by Sandia Tillotson, that you want to rename yourself in Zoom. So what you do is you hover over your picture, and over on the right, there are those 3 little dots. You click there and rename yourself with a 2 in front of your name. So like I'd be 2 Kent Ford. And as soon as you rename yourself, very shortly we will magically make you appear into a room separate with Sandia. And that is light and fun, and I think everyone who's done those rooms in the past has enjoyed them. Otherwise, stay right here with Tracy. And I did also want to mention, Tracy mentioned online resources. At the very start of the presentation, he mentioned that he'll be in Durango next week. So if anyone needs contact information to try to do a socially distanced, more detailed set of questions for him next week, you could do it with some real FaceTime instead of on Zoom time. Anyway, make sure you rename yourself if you want to switch to the other room. And let's see, I don't know of any specific announcements. We just had one more question come in for Tracy, but maybe we'll hit that in the smaller groups. I do want to mention upcoming GBRs. Next month, Wednesday, December 9th, we have Johnny Lecoq, and he's the founder and CEO of Fish Pond. And that's a family-owned Colorado company with roots in their core fishing market. But as CEO, he is using the brand strength to help open doors into the sphere of habitat protection. And he's known, well, literally worldwide, but really known nationally as as maybe sort of a similar version of Yvon Chouinard. It's a person who's taken his platform of business and moved it into an advocacy organization for habitat protection. So that's next month, December 9th. Let's see, one more minute before we split to this other group. Tim Wheeler, you had one other question.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know that Local Firsts Foundation and Local First has worked to provide a new individual health insurance product in our open enrollment period going on right now. It's from the Southwest Health Alliance. It's reduced premiums by about 35%. And I just want everybody to know so they can take advantage of this if they want. There's also a opportunity for small businesses that didn't have an opportunity to offer health insurance before to also do that through this similar product. So go look at the ACA exchange and look for Bright Health. Bright Health is the product, and see if that might help all of you. Thanks.
Super. On to our small networking groups, which should magically happen here, I think. We'll
Hey,
see.
Kent, this is Sundia. We've only got 2 folks signed up for networking, so
Oh,
I think
okay.
we're going to skip that today.
Okay, great. Well, more people here. Questions for Tracy. First up with questions, Dick White. I know you had a couple, and sorry we didn't get to them earlier.
Thanks, Kent, and thanks for a nice presentation. There were details I've known about CPACE for quite some time, but there were details I wasn't aware of. The question I did have is whether the 1% payment to the counties actually covers the costs. When the legislature first approved the CPACE program, I talked to the county treasurer, who said that her conversations with other county treasurers and indicated that they weren't recovering their actual costs for administering the grants. And I don't know if the county commissioners decided we're going to do it anyway, or whether there were some efficiencies found, or what happened there.
Yeah, well, I'll say this: most of the treasurers that I've talked to, they've told me that to facilitate the process for a single project is about 15 to 30 minutes of work per project per year. So let's say, all right, we'll call it 30 minutes of work per year per project. So, depending on what you get, your hourly rate, I guess. But a typical project, let's say the payments are around, $50,000 a year. That's $500 to cover 30 minutes of work for each project. So most treasurers I've talked to, yeah, the CPACE fee, way outweighs the amount of actual administrative effort. As a point, I'll point to one county. So Arapahoe County has actually done more projects than anybody. I think they have 20 projects, and they're receiving about $430,000 in fees through CPACE. So it could be a significant, not only cover your administrative costs, but an actual revenue source for the county. So yeah, I haven't really heard that concern from the treasurers that I've worked with that have actually facilitated projects.
This is Laura with Region 9, and we helped bring CPACE to the commissioners initially before they chose to approve it. And honestly, that was when the county treasurer's office was being audited. And that's one reason they just didn't want to move forward, because they wanted that to be cleared up before they took on any additional programs. And so then they approved it this last year. So.
If nobody, I have a second question that isn't directly related to CPACE, but actually residential PACE. So I will defer that if there's anyone else who has some CPACE questions.
Well, we did have a question, and I lost track of who had the question, but someone had a question about agricultural projects. Who had that question?
Then after that, Mary Ann. Go ahead, Mary Ann.
Oh, I was the one that asked that question about agricultural projects. I think over here in Montezuma County, obviously agricultural folks struggle with their utility bills. And so I'd love to hear more about how that could impact agriculture.
Yeah, so we've actually had quite a few agriculture projects to date. I showed you the one, Steve Ella, the organic farmer. Right down the street from him was a winery that also did a solar PV installation. We had all the way on the eastern side of Colorado, a farmer is using solar to power his irrigation pumps. And so he used CPACE to finance that project. So you can see a common theme. There's been a lot of solar related projects with agriculture, but quite frankly, it could be anything with a utility cost savings is eligible. So if there's, process improvements or just, better envelope upgrades, you need to replace the windows or the roof or any of the heating and cooling equipment, it's all the same. But yeah, there's been quite a few agricultural projects to date. A lot of them too, they'll combine, at least a few of them I know, combine the REAP grant. And so the way that can work, like Steve, this is what Steve Ella did on his farm. He received a grant, the REAP grant for his project. He essentially pocketed that money and financed the full amount of the project through CPACE. So it was, it just sort of helped his cash flow that much more by sort of structuring that way, finance the entire project and a lot of owners will do this. Any incentives that they get or grants from a utility or the government, they'll use that to increase their cash flow and use CPACE to finance the entire project.
And what's a REAP? What is REAP grant? What does that stand for?
It's the rural, I forget the acronym, but it's like the Rural Energy Agricultural something. I forget. I'll look it up for you, Marianne. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Thank you.
And then Tim Wheeler or Jeff Berman, did either of you have a follow-up question? Thanks, Emily.
I did not.
Okay, you just went on video for a sec.
Thanks for asking though.
Okay. Tim, I saw you raised your hand.
Yeah, I think I got answered by Marianne's, the response to Marianne's question. Thank you.
Okay, great. Kent, back to you.
Anyone else questions for Tracy?
Now that everybody else has passed, I will ask my other question. I know that residential PACE has been problematic because of the mortgage holder priority issue, and particularly that the federal agencies, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, haven't been enthusiastic about this. Is there any progress in that direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right. So residential PACE is available in only 3 states currently: California, Missouri, and Florida. That said, the residential market has represented, I showed you commercial has done $2 billion in financing across the country. Residential has done $7 billion just in those 3 states. So it's enormous for sure. But like you said, Dick, there are some serious concerns about residential in terms of customer protection and oversight. And of course, like you mentioned, the fact that some of the major mortgage holders are dead set against CPACE and not willing to subordinate. So yeah, there are those issues. They were working on a residential form of PACE here in Colorado quite vigorously for a while. And quite frankly, they couldn't find a really good answer to those issues. So they've sort of tabled it for now. It's not dead. They're going to revisit it. I don't know the timetable. I'd like to hope sometime soon. I have projects on my own house I'd love to use it for. But yeah, I wouldn't expect it anytime in the near future, but it is still a possibility.
Excellent. Anyone else? Last call for questions. Open floor. Okay, well, reminder, Tracy said they have a 2-hour version of this presentation on his website, on the CPACE website. We'll have a copy of this presentation at San Juan Citizens website. And Tracy, we are also wondering if your PowerPoint slides are shareable. Is that something you're able to do, or?
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. I'll send that to you right after we get done here, and then you can share it with anybody you like.
Super. Super. Well, I think that wraps it up. A big thank you to Tracy Phillips and CPACE, and a reminder for our upcoming GBR Wednesday the 9th, Johnny Lecoq, founder and CEO of Fish Pond. And Lynn reminded me that Fish Pond is also a B Corp, as we've had some discussions about B Corps in our community and getting more B Corps in the community. Johnny will be speaking to that as well. So I hope you can join us then. So I think that's it. Thanks so much, everyone, and we will see you next month.
All right, thank you.